Alright, so a new episode of Underverse just came out, and I'm literally recording this video after just watching it once. I don't even have a script. This was just my favorite episode since 0.3, which is crazy because that's been my favorite episode for a very long time, but 0.7 I think just did it. So I wanted to make this video because once again, first of all, this was just amazing. I want to talk about that. But also, there was a lot of stuff introduced in this from, a lot of fan comic stuff and all that. And, I feel like this episode also could just be slightly confusing for people. So I could also just point you in the right direction if you want to get more of an understanding about all the stuff that's going on in this episode. So TLDR, just read Aftertale, the Fatal Error comic. I will link them in the description, the comments, and there's just so much here. So I'm literally just going to skip through the video, try to find everything I want to talk about. So first of all, there is this universe. So this is Aftertale, or at least a version of Aftertale. To be honest, it's been a while since I've read Aftertale 2, so I don't completely remember how the original one ended. I actually recently read Fatal Error because I knew he was going to show up in this episode, so that's kind of the Aftertale timeline that I'm more familiar with at the moment. But, yeah, this was just a really clever fake out because Error destroyed all of the alternate universes, but as they point out, technically Aftertale is more of an alternate timeline, and so it makes sense that Error would want to leave it alone. He would definitely hate Geno, though, which actually is a big thing in the Fatal Error comic. So yeah, this is all over the place. I'll try to edit this if I ever need to stop to think, so yeah. So we have Cross here talking to everyone in Aftertale, and something the classic Sans here and Geno mention is that they can, once they meet him, they just kind of know about the X event, and that's actually an idea that Jakei showed in 0.4, where when Killer is in X-Tale for a bit with X-Kara, he says that when they're in a universe with another Sans, they can get glimpses of the memories of that Sans and that universe, so I think that's what's happening here with them. And there's also just a small moment that I love here, where Geno talks about his scars and Cross reaches for where the slash mark used to be on his face before Gaster fixed it. Just a small thing that's great. But with Cross, what I love even more is the interactions between him and Ink, because since the betrayal in 0.4 that traumatized Underverse fans worldwide, we have been waiting for Ink to be held accountable for his actions, alright? No one is above consequences. And, yeah, that's handled very well here. But on the other hand, it shouldn't be ignored all the stuff that Cross did throughout Season 1, and I feel like that's also acknowledged well, and that's just what makes, all the interactions between Ink and Cross so great, is that, a few hours ago, these two were literally, mainly... Well, yeah, Ink, I feel like by releasing Gaster also put Cross in danger, to be fair. So yeah, these two were basically at each other's throats trying to kill each other, and Ink even references how Cross was traveling across universes, stealing parts to try to rebuild his own. And it's also great that Jakei sneaks in a reminder that it was actually Kara who allowed Cross to be able to travel across, because It seems like in Season 1, even though they didn't have the X-Gaster, half of the soul, X-Kara was still able to use like a very beta version of Overwrite to like transfer code and temporarily take control of Underfell Sands in the fight in 0.2. And like, that's why I just love this episode so much. There is like so much throughout the series that is being acknowledged here, along with like all the references and stuff to Aftertale and Fatal Error. And speaking of Fatal Error, holy crap, Fatal Error is handled so well. This is all just so good. Now I need to collect my thoughts again. Make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, so now we gotta talk about, like, what Fatal Error is even trying to do in this encounter, because that's also very interesting. So, in the Fatal Error comic, Fatal Error's whole thing is that he was a Geno who got attacked by Error, and Error also is a Geno, by the way, so that's pretty... Yeah, that's why I wanted to explain stuff in this video. Well, holy crap, so Fatal Error's whole thing is that he starts abducting Sanses from alternate universes because he decides he wants to try and take pieces of their code and reform it into his own brother. And he can, like, see pieces of code that... I just noticed that wait, I'm sorry. UT Gaster just took X Gaster's chocolate milk. Okay, well, we'll talk about UT Gaster later. I was not ready for that. But, Fatal Error is trying to remake his brother with other Sans' code, and eventually he goes as far as taking other Papyrus's code. So, when I, like, saw that he was going to show up in Underverse at some point, and I read the comic, I was wondering if he was either going to go after Cross and Classic Sans, or if he was going to go after X Papyrus and Classic Papyrus. But in this fight, he revealed that it seems like he's trying to take the part... He's trying to get to X-Gaster through Cross's code to, I'm guessing, take the ability to overwrite, which actually makes a lot of sense, because if Fatal Error got the ability to overwrite, recreating his brother, even his whole world, would probably, like, be no problem at all. And so I just think that was a really clever direction to go. And also, during this fight, there is another reference that is just extremely funny. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I don't remember exactly where it happened. I've only watched this episode once so far, but I'm probably going to rewatch it, like, religiously. Okay, here it is. So, Fatal Error messes up Ink's hand, and Ink talks about how he can't even really feel it. And what's amazing about that is like a direct reference to something that happens in the comic. Fatal Error runs into Ink and Error, and Error and Fatal Error get into a fight, of course, because why not? And Fatal Error actually ends up messing up Error's hand just like that, and Ink just hilariously starts yelling at Error, "Hey, can you describe what that feels like? Does it hurt?" and stuff. And it's really funny. And now that just happened to Ink, and I still can't believe Cross just did a rocket punch. And I just noticed another thing that I didn't notice before that's really well done. Here you can actually see copy appear when Fatal Error grabs the sword, which is also, of course, something he also does in the comic. Just, it's... The way Fatal Error uses copy-paste is the darkest way you could possibly imagine using that. Don't let him anywhere near a Word document. But yeah, that is most of everything about Fatal Air. He also gives one of the hardest lines towards Gaster in the series here. Your power. Your downfall. So that bodes well for Gaster. Anyways, speaking of Gaster, now let's talk about UT Gaster showing up, getting more involved with the story. So I like how Gaster just kind of shows up just to roast Gaster. It's pretty funny. And just the rest of the X-Tail crew just kind of don't really give a crap. But something that I do have to wonder now that UT Gaster is getting more involved with the story is if Jakei plans to have Deltarune get involved with the story at all. Just because the thing is, Underverse started way before we even knew what Deltarune really was. And now that, you know, we have 2 chapters of Deltarune, we know that Gaster seems to be very involved in the story of Deltarune. So, yeah, there is, like, time if, like, Jakei did want to change anything in the script and stuff like that. I don't, like, expect, like, them to literally enter Deltarune at any point or anything like that, but I am, like, kind of wondering if maybe there will be some kind of reference to Deltarune at some point. I just think that would be cool since Gaster is, like, such a big part of Underverse, and also, it's so funny how, like, Gaster and X-Tail's themes ended up being so similar to Deltarune's themes, actually, in that, like, these characters don't have any freedom, they're, like, being controlled behind the scenes by Gaster, and that seems to be, like, a lot of what's going on with Deltarune, so I feel like referencing Deltarune in some way would just be a really nice way to tie things together even more. But then also, once Gaster basically starts talking crap towards Gaster, basically Gaster on Gaster bullying, Fatal Air, like, starts kind of yelling about it for him to shut up, which also makes a lot of sense because Fatal Air actually has some interactions with a Gaster in his comic, and he really doesn't like Gaster. They don't get along very well, so him, like, getting mad when he can hear Gaster is also just a nice touch. And yeah, I think that's, like, everything I can think of to talk about right now. There will probably be a few more things I want to say that I'll just edit in once, you know, I'm more calm. But yeah, this episode was amazing. And I will see you in a bit. After I've probably rewatched this episode a few times. I'm going to go insane. Alright, so I've rewatched the episode and I gathered my thoughts. As you can see, I barely have a notepad where I just wrote down the extra things I want to talk about. So first of all, just a fun little thing. I noticed that when Cross meets Aftertale, Toriel, and the rest of the people there, it actually pretty much went exactly the same as when Cross met Underswap in 0.3, except of course, you know, at the end of that interaction, you know, Cross went crazy and started attacking everyone, whereas here it's a lot more calm. So I just thought that was neat and worth mentioning. Then another thing I think is interesting is how Fatal Error is, like, basically the perfect counter to Gaster. It's like, if Gaster is a game programmer, Fatal Error is, well, a fatal error, you know, it writes itself. So I think it's really neat how he's, like, able to interfere with overwrite and teleport Cross and Ink to his little pocket dimension. Then during the fight, I also noticed it looks like Fatal Error tried to grab Cross. Once again, I'm thinking maybe he was going for the copy ability, and I'm actually not completely sure if like that really means anything, because it looks like Cross like quickly hit his hand away, but I'm wondering if it's possible like when Cross made contact with Fatal Error like that for a moment, if Fatal Error might have like done something with the code. But it's also possible that Fatal Error just failed to make contact, so nothing happened. We shall see. Then something I just remembered because UT Gaster talked about it while roasting him. X Gaster has been having visions, which is really interesting, since Xtale actually. In Timeline 8, he has a vision of something that happens in 0.4. Then in Timeline X, he seems to have multiple visions of that moment where he's standing in the rain in 0.5. And so it's been I'm pretty sure that like X-Gaster to some extent can like see the future, and he's going for some kind of ending with that knowledge. So that's interesting. But to the thing that I am most excited for, going forward with future episodes, is Cross's return home, because I am so curious to see like what the interaction between Cross and the other Royal Guards is going to be now, since in Timeline X, Cross freaking killed them all. And like, even if they had that moment in 0.6, you gotta wonder if the other Royal Guards like might resent Cross, since like they basically had X-Gaster. They were going to kill him, but then Cross interfered, so I wonder. And like Nightmare actually even like hints at that when attacking Cross in 0.6. I just remembered he like takes her shapes and it goes like, "We'll never forgive you, Cross," and stuff like that, so I wonder about that. But also, something that I'm just personally really excited for is for Cross to meet adult X-Kara. Because when you think about it, like, they were basically, like, roommates since Season 1 who just hated each other. And he always saw Kara in that kid form. So seeing Kara's real adult form, I feel like that could be a lot of really good humor. And just in general, it would be, like, really funny if they just, like, continued to despise one another. And it's also going to be really interesting to see, Cross meet up with Frisk again, because if you've read the Timeline X comic, their last interaction was pretty, it was rough. So, yeah, them meeting up again after that will be something. So yeah, that's pretty much all notes I got. So in the future, I think at some point, I actually want to make, like, more, scripted, bigger videos about, like, Underverse Season 1 and Xtale, and eventually Season 2. But for now, I'm not going to go, like, too crazy with any of that just yet, because Undertale Yellow, a fan game I've been looking forward to, is likely, I think, going to come out in November or December, and I want to be able to focus on that when that comes out. And also, after I finish Undertale Yellow, there's also some more videos about regular Undertale I want to make, so I'll just get back to Underverse whenever I get back to it. Also, something else to note is that now that 0.7 is officially done, this technically marks the halfway point of Season 2. So we've basically got 2 full seasons and half of the final season now. It's pretty crazy. Of course, there could be extra episodes, and also they've been planning on doing a crossover between X-Tale and Epic Tale for a while now, and I'm also really looking forward to that. So yeah, that'll all be interesting, but I think that's everything I have to say, so thanks for watching me ramble crazily about skeletons and alternate universes and stuff. Goodbye. So, one last fun fact that I just remembered that I want to talk about in this video. So, fun fact. This actually isn't the first crossover between Fatal Error and Underverse. So, something funny that is mentioned in this episode is that Cross points out that not only are there alternate universes, there are also alternate multiverses. And in one of these multiverses, Fatal Error actually straight up just offs Cross. So in this multiverse, during 0.3, this actually happens in Underverse 2 during 0.3, Cross actually manages to knock out X-Care for a while, and because he does that, he's actually unable to modify like any of the code or anything, so he doesn't really worry about stealing parts, he just kind of goes on a rampage and underswap for Nightmare. But during this period that he can't manipulate code or anything, Fatal Error realizes that, oh, that makes Cross extremely vulnerable, and so he just goes ahead and captures Cross and harvests his code. So yeah, that's pretty interesting.